My name is Lucas Belluri, and I'll be talking about environmental racism and racialized financing and the colonias of the Rio Grande Valley. So to start, what I want to do is really place the colonias of the Rio Grande Valley. The Rio Grande Valley sits at the southernmost tip of Texas along the Texas-Mexico border. And these blue-green dots you see across these four counties, Starr, Hidalgo County, Willacy, and Cameron, are hundreds of colonias. Colonias are, there are probably more colonias in the Rio Grande Valley than across the US-Mexico border. Colonias are typified by high poverty, primarily Latinx, mostly Mexican and Mexican-American. They have a high level of precarity, environmental, economic, and political. And these are really informal, clandestine communities that sort of developed over time without the purview of sort of local, county, or urban planners. Predatory lending is also rampant across the colonias and the Rio Grande Valley. This shows there are over 200 predatory lenders across the Rio Grande Valley. There are almost as many predatory lenders as there are FDIC insured banks. This is a ratio that is much higher than what we see across the state of Texas. And people are turning to these predatory lenders because they're really excluded from the secondary mortgage market. So the secondary mortgage market, those are going to be your refinance and rehab mortgage loans. That's what a lot of people use after a flood to really finance their recovery. What we see in the colonias is that people are actually very excluded from them. And so let's turn to the voices of the communities themselves to sort of get to understand and paint a picture of what's happening here. Many people use financieras. Financieras are going to be the Spanish word for predatory or payday lenders, car title lenders. And people turn to them because they have really no other options. And so if they need to repair their home or car after a flood, this is where they turn to. People talked about the difference between prestamistas and financieras. Prestamistas are going to be those loan sharks, and financieras are going to be those payday lenders. And what we see here is that people turn to financieras because they need to pay that loan little by little over time. They don't have the money or cash on hand to pay it all at once because of their sort of already limited economic situation. People also use this sort of necessity to pay little by little. They did that, and so they engaged in the rent-to-own model to sort of repair and replace their mortgage. So in this context, it cost this person twice what it would have to buy this TV that was destroyed by an electric storm. But in general, for these predatory loans, we see rates of 400 or 500%. People are often economically excluded as it relates to immigration and finance because of a lack of social security numbers. So if they don't have social security numbers, they can't have banks. And that means that they can't have access to sort of traditional lenders. So they're forced to use financieras. So why are people using all of these sort of predatory loans in general? Well, one of the issues is that there's a failure on the part of FEMA to support people who've experienced flooding in the colonias of the Rio Grande Valley. In fact, in 2008, FEMA was sued after Hurricane Dolly and lost because of a racialized profiling as it related to sort of FEMA funds. Another thing people talked about a lot was the failure of flood insurance to support them after a flood. So we've got two big institutions, flood insurance and FEMA, and neither are really supporting this community despite how vulnerable they are. In addition to this, we also see a lot of immigrant precarity as it relates to ICE and deportation. Many people talked about ICE and deportation. Even when a church or firefighters came to support and help the community, people were afraid to leave their home for fear of being deported. There's also a lot of tension between local government and colonias, not just federal government and colonias. Here we see an example of a social worker threatening to take this person's children away for not fixing their roof and painting the walls. But so this person had to get a loan from Financiera for $2,000 to do that work, but they still have all kinds of issues around asthma and sinus issues caused by the mold that's caused by flooding. In addition to all of this, many people are using sort of independent water sources like wells and septic tanks. And so that really limits them because when the floods come, it floods those septic tanks and limits their potable water. But people are still engaged in thoughtfully engaging in ways to sort of support one another. There's a lot of thoughtful creativity happening. So what are the lessons for decision makers? Well, colonias experience heightened environmental precarity, unpaved roads, lack of drainage, and private use water, wells and septic tanks that flood and create unpotable water. People experience a lot of marginalization there's no support from FEMA, predatory lending is rampant, and there's a violent immigration system. So what are the key takeaways? People in the Rio Grande Valley are surviving, but they're not recovering. They're able to survive because of their creativity and thoughtful engagement, but because of the multitude of marginalizations they experience, economic, political, and environmental, they're unable to recover. Thank you.